Welcome to DesignerDigitals Bi-Weekly Tips, September 21st, 2019. This week, how to create the Gridless Chunky Cuts Grids effect in Photoshop and Elements. Katie Petit's Cutting Files Chunky Cuts Grids are part of the Cutting Files collection at DesignerDigitals. In this series of tips, we've been exploring different ways to take the grids beyond the cutting machine and into your digital scrapbooking. I am constantly amazed at the creativity and inspiration that I see in the DesignerDigitals idea gallery. So when I spotted Linda, Earl of Oxford's clever use of the grids here, I practically squealed. I really knew that I wanted to show you how she achieved the super creative gridless grid effect. Here's the title page to Linda's 2015 album that inspired the tip. Each Chunky Cuts Grids download includes a set of individual PNG images of Photoshop brush set, that's an ABR file, as well as the SVG format you use for cutting. For this technique, use the PNG of the grid image that works best with your project. Linda chose the grid with 12 openings, but her unique approach to using the grids will work just as well with any of the other images in the set. Here's how to get started. In Photoshop or Elements, open a new 12 by 12 inch document at 300 pixels per inch or a digital project and the PNG version of the Cutting Files Chunky Cuts Grids that you want to use. Using the Move tool, which is the first tool in the Tools panel, drag the grid onto the new document. If you hold the Shift key as you click and drag, the grid will be centered on your new document. I'm going to go ahead and minimize the grid because we're not going to need that anymore. And then I'll make this a little bit smaller so that we can see what we're doing here. Select the grid layer in the Layers panel. It should be the top layer at this point. You'll know it's selected when it becomes highlighted over in the Layers panel. Next, get the Magic Wand tool. It shares the space in the Tools panel with the Quick Selection tool. In the Options bar at the top or the bottom of the screen, depending on your software, choose the New Selection icon, Point Sample, and click Contiguous. Click inside a hole in the grid that you want to fill with paper or a photo. You'll be clicking on the transparent portion inside the grid lines. This puts a selection which looks like marching ants around the inside section of the grid. Next, choose Select, Modify, Expand, and choose a number between 5 and 10 pixels. I'm just going to go ahead and type in 7 and click OK. If you want less space between the holes, choose a higher number. If you want more space between the holes, choose a smaller number, a lower number. Next, Control-click or Command-click on a Mac the Create a New Layer icon. It looks like a little square with the turned-up corner. This places a new layer beneath the layer that you're on. So now we have a new layer beneath the grid layer. Click the foreground color chip at the bottom of the Tools menu. It's the chip on the left. Right now mine's set to yellow. Click any color in the color picker and click OK. And then get the Paint Bucket tool. Click to use the Paint Bucket tool to fill inside the selection that you've made. So now look over in the Layers panel. Under the grid layer, you'll have a grid section filled with the color that you selected from the color picker. Press Ctrl-D or on a Mac system Command-D on the keyboard to remove the active selection. And then click on the top layer again, the grid layer, and get the Magic Wand tool again. Click the next section on the grid that you want to fill. And then expand the selection by choosing Select, Modify, Expand, and again I'll expand by 7 pixels. And then Control-click or on a Mac system Command-click the Create a New Layer icon and use the Paint Bucket tool to fill the new selection with color. I like to use a different color for each layer, so I'm going to go ahead and switch the foreground and the background color so I can get another color in there. Deselect by pressing Ctrl D, or on a Mac system Command D on the keyboard to remove the marching ants. Repeat this process with the remaining sections of the grid until all of the grid sections are filled with color and each section has its own layer in the Layers panel. Now you can hide the grid by clicking the Layer Visibility icon that looks like an eye on the left side of the grid layer in the Layers panel. With the grid hidden, you'll see just the rounded triangles of color that will serve as masks, which you can fill with pattern paper or photos. Create the center circle by selecting the top layer, which is your hidden grid. And then get the ellipse tool and drag out a circle. Now the ellipse tool shares a space on the tool bin with the custom shape tool and the rectangle tool. It is not the same thing as the elliptical marquee tool, which is right up here. You don't want to use that one, you want to use the one down here. When you click and drag, if your circle is becoming distorted, you'll know that you need to hold down the Shift key as you click and drag. It's different in different versions of the software, so just know that if it becomes distorted and you get that weird funhouse effect, you need to go ahead and hold the Shift key. Center the circle on the triangle. You can use the rulers if you need to get it centered. Just select View, Rulers from the menu bar, and then using the rulers here, it will help you to be able to find the center. If you like, you can apply a drop shadow to the centered circle. So I'll go ahead and apply a layer style, which is a shadow, to this circle. I'm going to use one of Katie Petit's drop shadows, and I'll use Paper Cool. And then click OK. Now here's the cool thing. You can right click on the layer after you've applied the shadow and choose Copy Layer Style. And then scroll down and select the first rounded triangle. Scroll, scroll, scroll all the way to the bottom layer that's above the background, and holding the Shift key, click on that layer. And then magically it selects every layer in between. Now you can right click again and choose Paste Layer Style. And it'll apply that same drop shadow to every layer. Doing this now saves you a bunch of time later applying the shadow to each layer as you go. Finally, fill the layers with paper. So I'm going to select a couple of papers to fill in here. I'll choose both of these pretty blues and open them in Photoshop. And then I'll drag these layers down so that I can see them better. And I'll begin by clicking on the first little triangle that I want to fill. And then using the Move tool, I'll drag the paper over and press Alt-Control-G on the keyboard. On a Mac system, that's Option-Command-G. That clips the triangle to the paper. Now, if that doesn't work for you, choose Layer, Create Clipping Mask from the menu bar instead. The paper should fill only the section of the first triangle. Then open the next paper or photo that you want to use. So I'll get the lighter blue. And repeat the clipping mask process. So I'll select this layer and drag the light blue paper over and press Alt-Control-G or Option-Command-G. Continue until each fill layer you created is covered with pattern paper or photos. Linda completed her page by adding embellishments and words to each layer. She dragged a background paper over the blank background to complete her innovative design. Thanks for inspiring us, Linda. This is such a fun and different way to use the Cutting Files Chunky Cuts grids and get more from our supplies. Thanks so much for watching this week's video, and be sure to check back in 2 weeks for another Designer Digitals tip.